Hello and welcome to Endemic Times. My name is Amira. I wanted to do something a little bit different today and talk about Biden's speech. I know there's been a lot of people that have already talked about it and how its themes and overall rhetoric is divisive, and some have felt like it wasn't anything at all. But there's a lot of other things going on here, particularly that of propaganda. So let's take a look and we'll walk through it.
My fellow Americans, please, if you have a seat, take it.
So as you probably got from the thumbnail that brought you to this video, one of the biggest things that has also been discussed from a lot of different people is the overall background that we're seeing here. Now, some would say that that's banal if you're at breaking points like Crystal and Sagar, but there's a lot that has to be said about what we see in the media. And this is the media. The whole point of movies and TV shows, and even how news outlets have their backdrops, everything is meant to convey emotions and instill certain types of messages. So what we're seeing right here with this red and black background, it looks very scary. It's very ominous. It feels very foreboding in a way. And that's the point. This isn't banal, Crystal. This actually has a lot of meaning here. And if you're going to say that there isn't a lot of meaning here, you may just very well be disingenuous.
I speak to you tonight from sacred ground in America. Independence Hall, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. This is where America made its Declaration of Independence to the world more than 2 centuries ago with an idea unique among nations, that in America, we're all created equal. This is where the United States Constitution was written and debated. This is where we set in motion the most extraordinary experiment of self-government the world has ever known.
So as you can see, he does kind of start this speech talking about the Declaration of Independence and that this was a look at we're all in this, of all people in this country. So at the start of this, it would seem that he's hopefully going to be making a unifying speech, trying to bring everyone together. As the president, commander-in-chief, that's your job. But that's not what he does here.
3 simple words. We the people. We the people. These 2 documents and the ideas they embody, equality and democracy, are the rock upon which this nation is built. But as I stand here tonight, equality and democracy are under assault. We do ourselves no favor to pretend otherwise. So tonight, I've come to this place where it all began.
So he's saying equality and democracy are under assault. When we couple his verbal message with the visual message that we are being given in the background, this is looking a lot more like a very authoritarian type of speech. He's looking very forceful and demanding from the bully pulpit that he's speaking from. All of these things have meaning, and they're meant to convey an emotion in us as a viewer. But particularly because this is the President of the United States, it's meant to elicit even more. And him trying to say that equality is under assault, while yes, that is something that we could be talking about, this is supposed to be a speech given to everyone, and most presidential speeches, in my opinion, should be unifying, not dividing. But we'll get there.
Do ourselves no favor to pretend otherwise. So tonight, I've come to this place where it all began to speak as plainly as I can to the nation. We, the people, are the true heirs of the American experiment that began more than 2 centuries ago. We, the people, have burning inside of each of us the flame of liberty that was lit here at Independence Hall. A flame that lit our way through abolition, the Civil War, suffrage, the Great Depression, world wars, civil rights. That sacred flame still burns. But first, we must be honest with each other and with ourselves. Too much of what's happening in our country today is not normal. Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans represent an extremism that threatens the very foundations of our republic.
So he did two things. The first one was emphatically stating "we the people," and he said this twice. And that is supposed to instill a sense of camaraderie, of community, that we're all connected, that we're all in this together. But the second thing that he does is creates an othering tactic. He separates "we the people" from Trump and MAGA Republicans. Whether you like them or not, they are citizens of this country. They vote, they have minds of their own, and they deserve to be represented by their president, regardless of whether their president agrees with everything that they believe. So by him saying at first, "we the people," but then transitioning to Trump and MAGA Republicans are extremists, that's creating a division, a line. It's a separation, and that's intentional. And it's meant to keep that division that we keep getting in the media instilled into us, that we can't trust Trump and MAGA Republicans, that they're the others, they're the bad ones, and we shouldn't be listening to them. As the president of the United States, he doesn't get to pick and choose which citizens he wants to represent. At 3 minutes and 47 seconds in, he's already using a very common propagandistic tactic of othering, and that's something that you should always be on the lookout for.
Not every Republican, not even the majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Not every Republican embraces their extreme ideology. I know, because I've been able to work with these mainstream Republicans.
So he's basically saying that, oh, it's not every Republican. I've been able to work with some of them. But to put forward that kind of a statement that, oh, I've been able to work with these people, but not these people. These people are unreasonable and they can't be reached. He is supposed to be the president to all of us, whether we like him or not, and whether he likes us, quite frankly. And we saw on the presidential campaign trail, he doesn't like a lot of people. Working class Joe is not really his cup of tea. Do we remember what he said to black voters? If you don't vote for me, you ain't black. There's a lot of things that President Biden has said that continue to be very divisive and not unifying. And that is the job of the president, whether we like it or not, whether he likes it or not. It's supposed to be a position of unification. But right now, all he's doing is division.
No question that the Republican Party today is dominated, driven, and intimidated by Donald Trump and the MAGA Republicans.
So again, he said that he's able to work with some Republicans, but then says that the Republican Party is dominated by Trump and MAGA Republicans. These are things that just don't compute.
But I'm an American president, not a president of red America, blue America, but of all America.
So he states it there, that he's not the president of red America or blue America, but all of America. So yes, that is a good thing to say. But in so much of this speech, he's going back and forth. He's trying to have it both ways. He's trying to act like he's a president for everyone, but then calling out people and othering them. How is that unifying? How are you a president for everyone if this is the kind of signaling that you're going to do in your speech?
And I believe it's my duty to level with you, to tell the truth, no matter how difficult, no matter how painful. And here, in my view, is what is true. MAGA Republicans do not respect the Constitution. They do not believe in the rule of law. They do not recognize the will of the people. They refuse to accept the results of a free election. And they're working right now, as I speak, in state after state, to give power to decide elections in America to partisans and cronies, powering election deniers, to undermine democracy itself.
He prefaced this statement with what he believes to be true. So it's his belief, it's his opinion. He's entitled to his beliefs and his opinion, but again, this is the president delivering a speech to the people. A lot of the things that he's saying to target MAGA Republicans, whether you agree with MAGA Republicans or not, and whether you agree with Biden or not, the way that he is calling them out on something that, to what he believes, is the threat to democracy. I'm sure there are some MAGA Republicans that believe full-heartedly that what they believe is true. The whole point of discourse is trying to understand where each of us are coming from. Are people being fed tons of lies? Yes. Are we being propagandized by both political parties in both aisles of media? Yes. But just as much as he believes that they're a threat to democracy, there are undoubtedly MAGA Republicans that feel that Biden is a threat to democracy. This is the president that mandated vaccines. This is the president that hasn't really seemed to care about what's happening to the working class American people. Inflation, the recession, the housing market. There's so much happening that he is not addressing, but he's certainly happy to send billions of dollars to Ukraine. While this might be what Biden believes, it doesn't make it true. And that's why, as we watch these things, we have to have a very critical eye on what people say and also the background and what the background is saying and what kind of emotions it's supposed to be instilling in us. So much of this is just fear, porn, and just trying to sensationalize everything and instilling division rather than instilling community.
MAGA forces are determined to take this country backwards to an America where there is no right to choose, no right to privacy, no right to contraception, no right to marry who you love. They promote authoritarian leaders and they fan the flames of political violence that are a threat to our personal rights, the pursuit of justice, to the rule of law, to the very soul of this country.
So there is a lot to say about the conservative Republicans and a lot of the trajectory that some of these big ticket issues are going. So things like the right to choose that, connected to the Dobbs case, affect a myriad of other substantive rights, like can you marry, having same-sex marriage, and contraceptive use. There is a lot that conservative Republicans are looking at essentially taking away because under the guise of let's bring it back to the states. But let us never forget that Biden, for the last 40 years that he has been in politics, the Democrats could have codified the right to abortion into law, but they didn't. The Democratic establishment has been using the right to choose as a cudgel for midterm elections and presidential elections. It could have happened under Obama when Biden was vice president. But also never forget, Biden is the one that had said in the past that he didn't believe a woman had the right to choose. While beliefs can change, while understanding of just our community as a whole and cultural progression can lead to progression of yourself and your ideas and what you believe, these are things that we cannot separate from Joe Biden because he is part of the Democratic establishment that is for too long been part of the very devastating effects and laws and policies that have been imposed on middle class and poor America, Black and brown people that have been imprisoned at much higher rates than white people for the same crimes. Joe Biden was the architect of that bill. These are things that we have to remember so that when he talks like this, we can say, no, I don't believe that he's unifying. I don't believe that he cares for the soul of America. Because look at what he's done when he's had power.
Look at the mob that stormed the United States Capitol on January 6th, brutally attacking law enforcement. Not as insurrectionists who placed a dagger at the throat of our democracy, but they look at them as patriots.
The dagger at the throat of our democracy. So it's extremely common that speeches are going to have a lot of very forceful and sometimes flowery language. That's the point. They're meant to convey emotion and have you react in a certain way. But to convey that kind of imagery for the January 6th insurrection, while yes, it was a very devastating day for the country, and it has and will continue to have a lot of consequences. The thing to remember, though, is that Democrats love when things like January 6th happen because they get to continue their fight to have more of a surveillance state. Don't forget, they increase police funding, they increase spending on war, they increase spending on the military in general. They're not as good of actors as people that believe in them think that they are.
And they see their MAGA failure to stop a peaceful transfer of power after the 2020 election as preparation for the 2022 and 2024 election.
So I get so sick and tired of hearing this, like that there wasn't a peaceful transition of power. Was Trump being ridiculous during the summer before the presidential election? Yes. And were liberal media outlets trying to impose and instill so much fear into us that he wasn't going to leave office, that he was going to use the military to stay in power? Those were all of the things that liberal media was trying to push on us, using propaganda to make us afraid of Trump and his MAGA Republicans. But the fact of the matter is, there was a transfer of power. Trump did not stay in office. He did not use the military to stay in office. So much of what Biden is saying isn't true. Is there the fear there? Yes, of course. When we look at authoritarian measures, some would argue that Biden has been more authoritarian than Trump.
They tried everything last time to nullify the votes of 81 million people. This time, they're determined to succeed in thwarting the will of the people. That's why respected conservatives like Federal Circuit Court Judge Michael Ludwig has called Trump and the extreme MAGA Republicans, quote, a clear and present danger to our democracy.
So again, he's using this othering tactic to say that they are a threat to our democracy. This is the overarching theme of this entire speech. There are going to be people that watch this speech that say, this is not my president. And they have every right to feel that way. You might not agree with it, but if that's how they feel, that's how they feel, because that's the message that he's conveying.
But while the threat to American democracy is real, I want to say as clearly as we can, there are far more Americans who reject the extreme MAGA ideology than those that accept it.
This is an othering tactic. This is meant to separate those Republicans from MAGA Republicans, people that believe in democracy versus MAGA Republicans. You do not have to like Biden and you do not have to like Trump or MAGA Republicans. But this here is propaganda. This is a persuasive message of othering that is meant to keep us divided because, as I've said on other videos, there's a lot more that unites us than divides us. Apparently, it's just which president we decide to lean towards that instills more of the division than others. This is extremely divisive. This is, in my view, pretty dangerous because he is the president of the United States. He is supposed to be representing all of us, not just some of us.
I believe America is at an inflection point, one of those moments that determine the shape of everything that's to come after. And now, America must choose to move forward or to move backward, to build a future or obsess about the past, to be a nation of hope and unity and optimism, or a nation of fear, division, and of darkness.
Fear, division, and darkness. That's pretty much the message that he's conveying in this speech. I've said it in a couple of the pieces that I've written on my blog at Endemic Times that a lot of what the Democratic establishment does is projection. What they say about the Republicans, Trump, and even MAGA Republicans, so much of that is projection. He's trying to act like he's trying to instill hope and have a message of unity, but that's not what he's doing here.
MAGA Republicans have made their choice. They embrace anger. They thrive on chaos. They live not in the light of truth, but in the shadow of lies.
Believing a shadow of lies. This coming from the president that pretty much worked alongside the media to keep his son out of the news cycle and to keep hidden that he was being investigated by the FBI and the whole laptop story. Do you remember that? Do you remember the censorship of that story? That wasn't just hidden because That was a concerted effort by Biden and his fellow comrades to keep that story out of the news. So he doesn't get to say that there's lies when he is part of the lying machine.
This is a nation that respects free and fair elections. We honor the will of the people.
I'd love to be able to say that this is a country that believes in fair elections, but look at what we've done to other nations that had real elections, and it was our administrations, both on the left and the right, that decided to go into these countries, do a coup, and change leaders. That is a completely hypocritical thing to say, and just wrong.
This is a nation that rejects violence as a political tool. We do not.
While we might not use violence as a political tool, quote unquote, this is definitely a nation that has a lot of violence. Look at the shows in our cultural media, things like Cops, the multitude of shows that have lots of violence, that then, because of those propagandistic messages, instill violence in people in this country. And for those that are suffering from mental illnesses, or if they're on the outer parts of their community and don't feel like they have a fellow community around them, they're going to inflict violence because they're upset, because they're angry. They don't feel heard, they don't feel listened to, and we don't have support systems in place. So while political violence might not be what happens, this is a country that is very much into violence. Look at our wars. Look at our military-industrial complex. We inflict so much pain and suffering on foreign nations and individuals. And we also use our police here at home in very, very destructive and harmful ways. And this is an administration that is continuing to up the funding for police. Well, you might not call it political violence. Our country is very violent, and there's a lot of evidence to support that.
History tells us that blind loyalty to a single leader and a willingness to engage in political violence is fatal to democracy.
Yes, it is, which is why I will constantly say that the vote blue, no matter who, is ridiculous. It is the stupidest thing. It's wrong, and you should not be instilling that in your party. But he comes from the party that coined that phrase, a vote blue no matter who. That is blind loyalty to a party, not even just to an individual. When's he going to think about that?
For a long time, we've told ourselves that American democracy is guaranteed, but it's not. We have to defend it, protect it, stand up for it, each and every one of us.
Defend, protect, and stand up for. I mean, this just feels like a reminiscent speech that we heard from Bush on 9/11 when it was like, okay, we're going to go and smoke them out of their holes. We need to go get these people. It was the same types of othering tactics that were used post 9/11 to go into the Arab world, into the Middle East, and decimate it completely for individuals that had nothing to do with 9/11. It is so similar to what Biden is saying in pretty much this entire speech. This is not a banal speech. There is so much messaging here. There is so much signaling here. The terms, the phrasing, the cadence, the visuals in the background. And by this time in this speech, the background has kind of started to lighten a little bit. Now, some are going to say, that's nothing. That's just them fixing their lighting. And yes, there is a possibility to that. But let us never forget how much money goes into these setups. How many people are involved? How many so-called professionals are in the background running this? I say there is so much here. There is so much messaging to be seen. And it's conveying that message to the people watching it. And it's going to have a very powerful impact, especially for the vote blue no matter who group that does, unfortunately, blindly follow behind the Democratic establishment without questioning their motives, the incentives behind so many of the decisions that they make, as well as their disingenuous nature when it comes to saying one thing and doing another.
That's why tonight I'm asking our nation to come together, unite behind the single purpose of defending our democracy regardless of your ideology.
So he says, regardless of your ideology, he wants everyone to come together. But how can people believe you that that's something that you truly do believe when you've spent the last 10 minutes describing a separation between Republicans and MAGA Republicans, between the people that believe in democracy and the extremists of Trump and MAGA Republicans? He's making a concerted effort to create that division, but then wants to say this is about us uniting and coming together for the thread of our democracy. Come on.
We, the people, will not let anyone or anything tear us apart. Today, there are dangers around us we cannot allow to prevail. We here, you've heard it, more and more talk about violence as an acceptable political tool in this country. It's not. It can never be an acceptable tool. So I want to say this plain and simple. There is no place for political violence in America, period. None, ever.
So I'm not going to say that we should have political violence. That's a really devastating thing to happen in any country. We cannot pretend, though, that political violence doesn't happen just because. It happens for a reason. Political violence occurs when people feel that they have no other recourse, no other measure for themselves to do anything. And unfortunately, more and more people in this country are feeling so disenfranchised. They can see how many corrupt politicians are using the system for their own personal gain. They're using the stock market and secret trading in the background. We're seeing all of this. And when we cast our votes, we're seeing that a lot of times that vote doesn't seem to matter because our politicians are beholden to their donors, not to us. In history, political violence occurs when the community has had absolutely enough. There's a reason why Marie Antoinette was the last queen of France. She's the one that said, "Let them eat cake." And we're getting a lot of that sense, not just from Biden and not just from Democrats, but from the bulk of politicians. They're seeing the situations that are going on. Inflation, recession, the housing market that's very likely about to crash, if not already on its decline. There are so many issues here happening at home. While we continue to get gaslit that we need to be supporting Ukraine no matter what and for as long as it takes. We just got out of Afghanistan. We spent 20 years there. And look at what we've done. Look at what we've done to the Middle East based off of lies from our politicians. So no, violence is not the answer. You cannot expect it to not happen when you're not providing anything to the people of substance, and especially to those that are hurting.
Ladies and gentlemen, we can't be pro-insurrectionist.
Pro-execution. You can totally tell that that's what he was about to say and was trying really hard to not say. It's just kind of funny.
Pro-American. They're incompatible. We can't allow violence to be normalized in this country. It's wrong. We each have to reject political violence with all the moral clarity and conviction this nation can muster. Now, we can't let the integrity of our elections be undermined, for that is a path to chaos. Look, I know politics can be fierce and mean and nasty in America. I get it. I believe in the give and take of politics, in disagreement and debate and dissent.
Do you? Because MAGA Republicans, whether you like them or not, there are going to be some things that they say that have some valid points to them. I am not a MAGA Republican. That is not what I'm trying to say here. But again, this is the president of the United States that's supposed to be representing everyone, not just certain segments of people that believe what he says or that ascribe to his beliefs. No, this is supposed to be a person of elevated rank in our society that is supposed to represent all of us, regardless of what kind of issues and disagreements we may have with each other. He's being extremely divisive, and it's it's not just a propaganda message. It's just he's not as unifying as he believes that he is.
A big, complicated country, but democracy endures only if we, the people, respect the guardrails of the republic. Only if we, the people, accept the results of free and fair elections. Only if we, the people, see politics not as total war, but mediation of our differences. Democracy cannot survive when one side believes there are only two outcomes to an election. Either they win or they were cheated. And that's where the MAGA Republicans are today.
Hillary had very similar thoughts on the 2016 election. I mean, and she continues to say that she won the popular vote, but not the electoral vote. And let's not forget, she instigated the entire Russiagate scenario that spent the last 4 years during the Trump years being litigated in the press. We continue to be sold, oh, this is Russia propaganda. When you look at the actual words and statements that Biden is making, there is so much lacking of truth here. There's a lot of projection. There's a lot of instigating of division and othering, which I've said. But to act like he's coming from a side that has a superiority over the Republicans when it comes to facts and lies and who believes the facts and lies, there's just not as much ground to stand on as he believes.
They don't understand what every patriotic American knows. You can't love your country only when you win. It's fundamental. American democracy only works only if we choose to respect the rule of law and the institutions that were set up in this chamber behind me. Only if we respect our legitimate political differences.
Institutions that did not believe that Black people were a full person and didn't have any respect or acknowledgement of women as a person. Like, if we're going to talk about history, let's talk about history.
I will not stand by and watch. I will not, the will of the American people, be overturned by wild conspiracy theories and baseless evidence-free claims of fraud. I will not stand by and watch elections in this country stolen by people who simply refuse to accept that they lost.
Coming from the administration that wanted to act and used a lot of rhetoric to say that Trump was a Russian asset. The hypocrisy.
I will not stand by and watch the most fundamental freedom in this country, the freedom to vote, and have your vote counted and be taken from you and the American people.
So does anyone else remember that coin flip? I can't remember what state it was in, but it was for between like Buttigieg and Bernie. Like, just think about that. The Dominion voting machines. There's a lot of crap that happens when it comes to elections and whether or not votes actually do get counted. And there's a lot of critiques that can be made on both sides, Republicans and Democrats. And both Republicans and Democrats have not done anything to make sure that we do have more secure elections. If anything, both parties, especially Democrats, have allowed the gerrymandering that happens within Republican states to continue to happen because it benefits the Democrats too. And that's really the big thing to keep in mind here. This is not really a two-party system. This is a one-party system. One party that's got a strict line that they are trying to follow, and they're doing everything that they can to lay down the roadmap to make those things happen. And it's the Democrats that are helping to usher in that realization for the Republican Party.
As your president, I will defend our democracy with every fiber of my being, and I'm asking every American to join me. Throughout our history, America has often made the greatest progress coming out of some of our darkest moments, like you're hearing that bullhorn. I believe we can and must do that again, and we are. MAGA Republicans look at America and see carnage and darkness and despair. They spread fear and lies. Lies told for profit and power.
They spread lies for profit and power. The same can be said for Biden and the Democrats. Again, this is it's pure projection, and it's also very divisive, propagandistic, persuasive language that's meant to keep us separated, divided, to keep people on the more Democratic leaning side more fearful of MAGA Republicans. Because when we start to talk to each other and we get rid of the political stances that we have, we're going to see so much more that unites us than divides us. And for many of us, that unification is that all of our political leaders are liars. They are corrupt. They are not working for us like they should. And Biden just continues to be very divisive in this speech. And that's the point. He's not being a unifier. He's not talking to the soul of the nation. He's talking to his political party, those that are vote blue no matter who, Democrats, and his donors, and to the few Republicans that, yes, he can work with. It's just so much messaging. It's so much division, and it's really heartbreaking to see because this, again, is the president. And I don't have a lot of standards for Biden to meet. I wasn't surprised by this speech at all. But it's sad for the younger generation that is going to see this and feel like they don't have a leader. And there's a lot of us that feel that way.
But I see a different America. An America with an unlimited future. An America that's about to take off. Hope you see it as well. Just look around. I believe we could lift America from the depths of COVID. So we passed the largest economic recovery package since Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And today, America's economy is faster, stronger than any other advanced nation in the world.
That is not true. We have inflation. We have an impending recession. This is the administration that decided to change the definition of a recession because when the GDP numbers came out, they knew it wasn't going to look good.
Faster, stronger than any other advanced nation.
Our economy is really, really suffering. And it's not because of the stimulus checks that came out. It's because of the CARES package that moved over $6 trillion of wealth to the top. It was the PPP loans that got completely forgiven. And more importantly, it's the war in Ukraine. We have now spent over $70 billion in Ukraine. That is how much money we have sent to Ukraine. And that is greatly affecting our economy, because it increased our gas prices. Never forget that those were at $5 a gallon as a national average. There's also the very real situation of the housing crisis that the Biden administration, as well as the Trump administration, did nothing to subvert at the beginning of the pandemic. And even now, when it's come to very big, large companies like BlackRock, buying up entire suburbs and making it incapable for new homeowners to buy homes. This economy is not strong. We still have a supply chain crisis. We're seeing countless companies and businesses where union organizers are trying to get better wages and benefits for not just for themselves, but for each other. Teachers are going on strike. That is not because our economy is good. That's because our economy is suffering. That's because our capitalistic economy that's being completely run by corrupt politicians is only meant to help the elite and not us. This idea of pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, that there's a meritocracy, these are all bullshit, gaslighting tactics. None of that is real. And our economy is not strong, as much as the Biden administration might be trying to change definitions in order to show that.
In the world, we have more to go. I believe we can build a better America. So we passed the biggest infrastructure investment since President Dwight D. Eisenhower. And we've now embarked on a decade of rebuilding the nation's roads, bridges, highways, ports, water systems, high-speed internet, railroads.
And let's also remember that this is the same president that kicked everyone off of unemployment last year of 2021, right at Labor Day. Millions of people that were seeing a benefit from having their unemployment benefits extended because we were going through a global pandemic that was greatly affecting people's ability to go to work. Biden cut that off. He stopped that aid, kicking millions of people off of unemployment and then using that tactic to say that our unemployment numbers are great. Look at this wonderful economy. More bullshit tactics, more gaslighting, and more lies.
I believe we could make America safer. So we passed the most significant gun safety law since President Clinton. I believe we could go from being the highest cost of prescriptions in the world to making prescription drugs and healthcare more affordable. So we passed the most significant healthcare reform since President Obama signed the Affordable Care Act.
I've got a lot of issues with the Affordable Care Act. One of them being the fact that it made it so that you had a penalty when you did your taxes if you weren't paying into a health plan. Putting prescription drug prices on the same line as the Affordable Care Act is disingenuous. But it's also the fact that the United States, what is supposed to be the richest country in the world, is the only developed nation that does not have nationalized health care. We do not provide maternity leave for women on a federal scale. In some states, it's available, but in most, it's not. There are so many aspects of our healthcare system that because of big pharma and because of political donations that go to different parties and to candidates just like Biden, they're able to use those donors to not do anything for us. We keep getting watered down policies. We keep getting rhetoric saying we're going to do more for you. But when it comes down to it, we don't, because they're disingenuous. Because they're lying. These politicians do not work for us like they should. They work for their donors.
And I believe we could create a clean energy future and save the planet. So we passed the most important climate initiative ever. The cynics and the critics tell us nothing can get done, but they're wrong. There is not a single thing America cannot do, not a single thing beyond our capacity.
Except getting Democrats to codify the right to choose into law, to make same-sex marriage codified into law. Those are things we can't do. We can't have universal health care. We can't have free college. We can't have free meals in schools. We can't have teachers being paid proper salaries. We can't give people the right to choose whether or not they want to get a jab in their arm and whether or not that was going to be contingent on their employment, which that employment is contingent on if you work, you can then get health care. We continue to be told we can't get a lot of things, that we can't do a lot of things, that we can't fund a lot of things. But we sure can fund the police. We sure can fund the military-industrial complex. We sure can send money to Israel and to Ukraine, but we can't have all of these other things that would be extremely beneficial to our society.
If we do it together, it's never easy. But we're proving that America, no matter how long the road, progress does come.
Well, Roe v. Wade and Casey v. Planned Parenthood got overturned by the Dobbs ruling, so we're going backwards. We're not going forwards.
Look, I know the last few years have been tough, but today, COVID no longer controls our lives. More Americans are working than ever. Businesses are growing. Our schools are open. Millions of Americans have been lifted out of poverty.
Actually, more Americans are going into poverty, and child poverty is increasing by 41%. I will link a video to that down below and at the end. What he's saying is not true.
Millions of veterans once exposed to toxic burn pits will now get what they deserve for their families and their compensation. American manufacturers come alive across the heartland, and the future will be made in America, no matter what the white supremacists and the extremists say. I made a bet on you, the American people, and that bet is paying off, proving that from darkness, the darkness of Charlottesville, of COVID, of gun violence, of insurrection, we can see the light. Light is now visible. Light that will guide us forward, not only in words, but in actions. Actions for you, for your children, for your grandchildren, for America. Even in this moment, with all the challenges we face, I give you my word as a Biden, I've never been more optimistic about America's future. Not because of me, but because of who you are. We're going to end cancer as we know it. Mark my words. We're going to create millions of new jobs in a clean energy economy. We're going to think big. We're going to make the 21st century another American century because the world needs us to. That's where we need to focus our energy. Not in the past, not on divisive culture wars, not on the politics of grievance, but on a future we can build together. The MAGA Republicans believe that for them to succeed, everyone else has to fail. They believe America, not like I believe about America.
So again, he's saying more othering tactics and being extremely divisive with his rhetoric. He's making this separation that MAGA Republicans are not for everyone. And while there are going to be some MAGA Republicans that are white supremacists and are extremists and are insurrectionists and are election deniers, that doesn't make up the entirety of MAGA Republicans. There's a lot of MAGA Republicans that are called MAGA Republicans, but they just, like so many other people, feel like regular politicians have not been doing the work and don't represent them. That's why Trump was so intriguing to them. And these, we have to remember, there were voters that voted for Obama that then voted for Trump because there was a lot of rhetoric, whether you like Trump or not, that a lot of people, especially working class and poor, disenfranchised groups, could get behind, that felt like there was corrupt politicians in Washington, D.C., that was the bulk of what was going on. The whole drain the swamp was a very intriguing message because people could see that imagery conveyed in their head when Trump would say that. And also the whole fake news thing. Now, there's a lot of things that Trump said while he was president and after that are fake, that aren't real, that are lies, that is gaslighting. But he brought forward a very interesting thing in our now present day discourse because there is fake news. But that fake news is not just on one side. It's also from the Democrats.
I believe America is big enough for all of us to succeed. And that is the nation we're building, a nation where no one is left behind.
And if no one is going to be left behind, then we cannot leave MAGA Republicans, whether you like them or not, hate them or not. We cannot leave them behind because that is only going to create more extremism. Like I said earlier, these are such similar othering tactics that were used post 9/11 to instill so much fear and hatred towards the Arab world and Arab people and Muslims. It was such a common rhetorical use of language from political leaders, and that is extremely dangerous because when you take a group of people that likely are already feeling very separated from the mass of the community, that is only going to lead them into darker paths. It's only going to make them feel more on the outside. And when you're on the outside, you're going to get more intrigued and more enthralled by very extremist views. So this language is not inclusive. It is not unifying. It's extremely divisive.
I ran for president because I believe we're in a battle for the soul of this nation. I still believe that to be true. I believe the soul is the breath, the life, and the essence of who we are. The soul is what makes us us. The soul of America is defined by the sacred proposition that all are created equal in the image of God, that all are entitled to be treated with decency, dignity, and respect, that all deserve justice and a shot at lives of prosperity and consequence, and that democracy must be defended, for democracy makes all these things possible. It's up to us. Democracy begins and will be preserved in we, the people's habits of the heart, in our character, optimism that is tested yet endures, courage that digs deep when we need it, empathy that fuels democracy, the willingness to see each other not as enemies but as fellow Americans.
So it is a little hard to make out, but I think I finally can hear what that voice is saying in the background. And I'm pretty sure it's saying F Joe Biden. Just a funny little thing to finally be able to kind of catch in the background, because I've been trying to figure out what is this chanting that I'm hearing in the background. And I'm pretty sure that they're saying F Joe Biden.
Look, our democracy isn't perfect. It always has been. Notwithstanding those folks you hear on the other side there, they're entitled to be outrageous.
So he says they're entitled to be outrageous. Okay. So it's again, it's like it's this, he keeps saying one thing and then saying another and conveying a message of unity, but then conveying a message of division. While I do believe that this is a very propagandistic speech, it's also typical Biden fashion.
This is a democracy. But history and common sense, good manners is nothing they've ever suffered from. But history and common sense tell us that opportunity, liberty, and justice for all are most likely to come to pass in a democracy. We have never fully realized the aspirations of our founding, but every generation has opened those doors a little bit wider to include more people who have been excluded before. My fellow Americans, America is an idea, the most powerful idea in the history of the world, and it beats in the hearts of the people of this country. It beats in all our hearts. It unites America. It is the American creed, the idea that America guarantees that everyone be treated with dignity. It gives hate no safe harbor. It installs in everyone the belief that no matter where you start in life, there's nothing you can't achieve.
That no matter where you start in life, there's nothing you can't achieve. That may have been true when Biden was a young guy, but that is not true to the majority of younger Gen Xers, millennials, and Gen Z. This whole meritocracy, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps if you're savvy enough, if you're willing to work hard enough. That's just not the reality anymore. And so I don't know who he's speaking to. As a millennial, he's not speaking to me. He doesn't represent me. I don't like Joe Biden. I will emphatically say that. I don't trust him. I don't believe him. I feel that he's a corrupt, lying politician like so many others. But trying to act like we have a system that allows for moving up in trajectory, that just doesn't exist anymore, if it ever really did.
That's who we are. That's what we stand for. That's what we believe. And that's precisely what we're doing. Opening doors, creating possibilities, focusing on the future. And we're only just beginning. Our task is to make our nation free and fair, just and strong, noble and whole. And this work is the work of democracy, the work of this generation, the work of our time, for all time. We can't afford to leave anyone on the sidelines. We need everyone to do their part.
We can't afford to leave anyone on the sidelines, whether you agree with them or not. That is essentially what we do need to be doing with MAGA Republicans. We need to be finding our middle ground with MAGA Republicans and have conversations, as difficult and uncomfortable as they may be. That is true unification. That is truly moving us forward into a different era. But he has spent the entirety of this speech creating that division. You can't bring people into the fold that you're purposely dividing.
So speak up, speak out, get engaged, vote, vote, vote. If we do our duty in 2022 and beyond, then ages still to come will say, we, all of us here, we kept the faith. We preserved democracy. We heeded our worst, we heeded not our worst instincts, but our better angels. We proved that for all its imperfections, America is still the beacon to the world, an ideal to be realized, a promise to be kept. There's nothing more important, nothing more sacred, nothing more American. That's our soul. That's who we truly are. And that's who we must always be. I have no doubt, none, that this is who we will be, and that we'll come together as a nation that will secure our democracy, that for the next 200 years, we'll have what we had the past 200 years, the greatest nation on the face of the earth. We just need to remember who we are.
Well, that past 200 years was filled with Jim Crow laws and slavery. Women didn't have rights. Women couldn't vote. Black people were not looked at as a full-fledged citizen. We decimated the Native American tribes in this country. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell. And just remember to stay safe, take care, and be kind to each other.